All right, we hope you are warm and safe. If you're in the Northeast and if you're on the West Coast, we hope you're safe and not too warm. This is BaT Nerds. We've got a panel of experts. That's that guy and me. Are we experts, Steve? I don't know. I know that's pretty funny.
Sure.
We're going to talk about some listings on Bring a Trailer, P-Car Market, and Cars and Bids. We're going to make some predictions. We're going to talk about our predictions from last episode. This is BaT Nerds. The bidding starts now. BaT Nerds is your YouTube car game show. Yes, it is. Welcome, everyone. We are live on a Sunday night live episode of BaT Nerds. Thanks for hanging out. My name is John Polnik. I'm coming to you live from the Container Park in downtown Las Vegas, while my partner right over there, all the way over in San Francisco. He looks like he's just inches away, but it's actually hundreds of miles. What's going on in San Francisco?
Could you? Nothing's going on in San Francisco, but we both have big weeks. We're going to be in Boise, Idaho next weekend. I know you are scheduled to be in Southern California. John, are we going to host a BaT Nerds on Wednesday remote? Is that a feasibility possibility?
I am exploring the technical ability to do that. That is my intention. If you are a regular BaT Nerds fan, make sure you check the Instagram channel, or I guess whatever
50-50?
page, whatever. Yeah,
50-50
just to make
at
for
this point?
updates on that one. We really want to do one, but it is extra difficult on the road. We'll be in Boise, Idaho, like Deep said, on Sunday, but we're coming home. We should be home in time to be able to do the show on Sunday. So
Yeah. Saturday, the 25th of January, the PCA, I believe, is doing like a tech talk, and my partner and I will be presenting. We have no idea. We've been putting in so much work. We've put in so much work on this.
Signed up and paid money to come and see us, and sorry in advance. We'll have fun. We'll have a good time one way or the other.
JP and I are basically gonna go there with a baseball glove and play catch, and you guys can watch.
It's gonna be a good time. I just shout out to our fans, everyone in the Nerd Herd, everyone that's joining us live tonight. Thanks for hanging out. There's gonna be a lot of the local Vegas names that aren't gonna be in the live chat tonight because they're all hanging out at Red Rock Country Club. They're having the PCA Holiday Gala. They always do it after Christmas. So Gary Lee and a bunch of those guys are all hanging out there. Chef, who's on, friend of the show.
Sure, Gary.
yeah. Well, he is the president of the local PCA chapter, so he had to do it. But
he could be watching us on his phone. I mean,
they've got a big screen on there, and they're looping Porsche Road Trip and Cars Unknown. So that's kind of cool. So I'm kind of there in spirit. My face is there, my voice is there. If someone turns up the audio, how awful is that? All right, guys.
Is that what Anthony's inviting us to Boise for? Are we going to the PCA Boise Gala for Christmas? I mean, are we supposed to? I don't think
anyone's wearing a black tie for our event.
For Boise,
if you're planning on that, casual, just wear all black. You're fine. So I guess black tie will be fine. All right, let's get past all that stuff. This is the channel where we analyze listings on Bring a Trailer. We go through, we find the most interesting cars. We talk about the listings. We talk about the cars. We let you know what we think about the listings, and we make predictions. What will the results of these auctions be? That's what's kind of fun with this show. We always start by reconciling the results of our predictions, which don't always go our way, do they, Michael Deeb? This first car on the list from last week, we had Nathan Mers as a guest on the last episode. Not last week, just a couple days ago. And it was great to have him join us. So let's get to it. Let's talk about some predictions that we made.
Revealed to us, JP, live while we were covering this car, this 1987 Porsche 959 Comfort. Nathan let it slip that he knows the owner personally and said that he was expecting the guy to get over $2 million. If not, it would be a failure to sell, which was really interesting. So 13,000 kilometer 959. Let me do the math for you. That's just 7,800 miles on one of less than 300 produced 959 Comfort. This car is in the United States on a clear Montana title. Looks spectacular. I know, JP, we might think that silver is a little mundane, but man, on a car like this, it just looks right. And the interior is gorgeous. The sports seats, all the technical tour de force that 959s are. John, I don't even remember if we've ever covered a 959. We probably have at some point. But this was a cool car, and having Nathan on and him being able to speak to the car personally, talking about how extraordinary the car is, but then when you drive it, it's almost underwhelming because it's just so good. It doesn't feel exotic. It's so refined. It lacks the drama and the theater that other supercars from that era certainly would have, bestowed on you. Anyway, JP, according to classic.com, in the secondary market for a 959 Comfort in the United States, or at least in the world market, the way they've been trading, the average selling price for these is $1,800,000. JP, I like this car. I didn't think it would break 2, but I did think it had a chance to sell at my number of $1,950,000. You parked conveniently just over me. You took the bid of $2,959,000. And then Nathan Mers basically went over you by about 50 grand. Nathan's bid was $2,050,000. And saying that at his number, he thought it would be a no sale because they would be looking for a little bit more. So JP, our car did very well. It hammered at $1,875,000, and it sold for that number on 18 bids. So not a big bid action, but certainly a realistic reserve set. And the hammer price is absolutely congruent with the data that we get from classic.com. So while we looked at this car and it was basically pristine, had a Japanese origin story, and then it's on a Montana title, it's titled in the United States, the right colorway, definitely collectible miles. I think we all thought it would flirt it a little bit closer with $2 million, but hey, $1,875,000 is nothing to shake a stick at. Were you surprised at all by that result? Were you surprised based on what Nathan said that being the lowest number, it's still sold for that number?
No, I don't think I was surprised. Maybe I was a little optimistic with my bid going over $2 million. I feel like things are still a little bit optimistic going into kind of a new season here, but we aren't rolling. I mean, it is still January. Car business people always talk about how car sales pretty much stop at the beginning of the year. But I mean, to see a car like this sell for over $1.8 million, it didn't break the $2 million mark, and maybe it will this spring. I think this bodes well for what's coming on the market. Our thumbnail says, is there a freeze in the market right now? And we talked about that a little bit on the last episode, the idea that the fires might cause some price spikes on classic cars like this. I mean, God forbid one of these were lost in one of the fires, and again, we're not making light of all the real losses that have actually happened in those fires, and our hearts go out to everyone who have lost their homes and lives. And we know that the priority for most folks are their homes and rebuilding and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people are going to be in the market for cars like this here in the coming months as they look forward to kind of restoring their life and getting back to normal and replacing things that they may have lost. Let's face it, someone that may have lost something, a rare car, maybe there weren't any 959s lost, but I guarantee you that there were no shortage of multi-million-dollar cars burned up, unfortunately. So when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar car or any car that's over $1 million, when you go to replace it, chances are you're probably not trying to replace it with the exact same thing, because that's unlikely. You're going to go out there, okay, I just got my $2 million check because I lost an F40 or something like that, and you're like, well, okay, maybe I'll get a 959 this time around. So I think the demand for stuff like this is going to go up as we get later in the season, but I do think it is. I think that there were also probably fewer people paying attention to the market in these last few days because a lot of folks are they have their eye off this ball. And then of course there's a big old snowstorm on the East Coast. Our friend, where is Chris Carbine watching tonight? Is it snowing in New Orleans? I heard they might have even gotten a flurry there. So I don't know.
Wow.
I think the result, I don't know if that actually happened. That's probably not true, but this 959, I think that number makes sense in January. I think now is a good time to buy something like this because I think if you did, you'll probably be able to flip it by this summer. What do you think, Deeb?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say that it was well bought. I just think that that's like, again, because the number's so congruent with the average, I just think the guy did fine. I think the seller did fine. I think the buyer did fine. And given all the circumstances you just mentioned, that no eyelashes, no eyebrows raised, I just think that's good. If anything, I'd say he's fortunate that he sold the car and he found somebody willing to pay that much. So perhaps well sold. And yeah, no big deal. I think if we get we're expecting some potentially very positive things as we wind down first quarter and go into second quarter with a new house, a new cabinet essentially in place, and this bull run and all this sort of thing. So it's entirely possible this car could prove to be well bought if we get a nice little spike in the secondary market. It's a blue chip car, JP. I just don't think you can go wrong, and so congratulations to everybody involved.
Yeah, unless you bought, like, what is it, the Melania coin or the Trump coin that came out that was rocking it, and then they launched a Melania coin at the same time, which made everybody go, oh, okay, there's no scarcity, and it crashed the Trump coin. That wasn't exactly a winning strategy there, guys. Do better on that one. Hopefully that's not a sign to things to come. That was not too bright. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about some more cars. What's that?
Try to thinly veil your greed, will you?
Yeah, come on, guys. All right, what's the next car on the list, and how did it do? What do we got?
JP, okay, so interesting. There is a thing going on with Bring a Trailer. This is the second time I've seen this. All right, let's get to it. All right, JP, we're going to check back in on our 1970 Porsche 914-6. This car has been rebuilt. This was an original 914-6 car that was born in Signal Orange. However, some time ago, this car got refreshed with fresh orange paint. The 2-liter motor was taken out and is included in the sale, replaced by another motor that has been punched up to 2.7 liters. And then they added an MFI system to the car. So this is easily over 200 horsepower. And if they went crazy with the build as far as like pistons and cylinders, this could be a 250 or more horsepower car. The car's got Fuchs wheels. It's got a Momo Prototipo steering wheel and dual exhaust. And then the big GT fender flares to make this car evocative of the factory race cars from back in 1970. So super cool car. I bet it's an amazing driver. The original motor and wheels and things like that are included in the sale. We expected fairly decent things from this car, JP. So according to classic.com, the average selling price of a 914-6 in the secondary market is $92,600. I thought this car, with everything that's been built and all the things that were original that were included in the sale, this car had a chance to go to $125,000. John, you took the under at $99,914. And Nathan Mers, who joined us remote on the last show, Jason took the territory above me. JP, his bid was $127,914. So here's where it gets interesting, John. I watched when this car closed, and it closed at $80,000, where it failed to sell on 8 bids. That's what my computer screen said. As I'm logging back in now, I'm seeing that the car sold for $90,000 on 8 bids. So what I'm wondering, JP, is did I not refresh my screen? Because again, mine said bid
no,
2.
This was one of those after sale things. Yeah.
Okay. Or was it one of those post sale where they just posted it that it actually sold for $90,000, which is kind of weird. I wish Bring a Trailer would give us all of the data so we can make better sense of it. But anyway, there you have it. Yeah, sold on 118 to Mike Delaney for $90,000. This listing was sold via an offer. So there you go. So congratulations to Matt Crandall at 914 or at 911R. They sold the car after, which is fantastic. $90,000 still seems like a deal to me, JP. Fuck, I mean, sorry. For $90,000, I wish I would have bought this car. I think that's a lot of performance and a head-turning car. I think these cars are achingly beautiful. I dig this one. I said it when we were opening the show. This is how I want my 914 to be. I know you joke, JP, that, yeah, like once you live with a 914, you're like, yeah, get me back into a 911. I dream of a time when I can have a 914 and a 911, and this is how I want the 914 to look. So, JP, $90,000 was the selling price. Surprised by that number?
Not really. I think that's the right amount for it. I didn't think it would break $100,000. I think 914s. 914s. Well, everything we saw prices of everything kind of crazy a couple of years ago, of course, and that's been talked to death. Everybody knows why. But 914s are one of those cars that they never lead the pack when it comes to values, right? They always follow what 911s are doing. If classic 911s or other classic Porsches are going up in value, the 914 will be somewhere behind it. Right, but as soon as the 911s start to flatten out, the 914s drop. It's kind of like real estate in the desert Southwest. It's the first to crash and last to recover. 914s are great. They're really cool. They're neat, but nobody wants one if they can afford a 911. So like you just said, you get a 914 in the garage when you have a collection of a bunch of other 911s. Nobody gets a 914 as the car they actually want. Even one as cool as this one. And I think this car is great, but it's just like, whatever. I think a 914 scratches the itch for classic car owners when they're in the 20, 30, maybe $40,000 range. But you start getting over that, and you start getting real options. Who the hell would buy any version of a 914 over a classic 911? The answer is no one, unless they're stupid. And I like 914s. 914 was my first Porsche, and I don't hate 914s. I just think they need to. They fit in a specific lane, and I just $90,000 for one, $100,000 was. I don't care how good it is. I don't want it. I hate. Yeah. Anyways, there you go. What do you think of that, guys?
Everything you just said was valid, but I'm still going to tease you for hating 914s. That's just like there's no way you're going to die on that hill as Wade would
I hate 914s. I'll say it. Look, again, 914 rubber. Matthew Whitesell, you're wearing his hat. I probably have one right here. Mm-hmm. I've got 914 rubber hats all over the place. I love 914s in general, but they need to stay in their lane. They don't belong in the more than $40,000 range. Sorry. Just get out. You just you want to bring one to a car show? Awesome. I'll respect it. I'll love the car. Yeah. I'm not going to ish on someone for having a 914. Yep. But anybody that pays more than $40,000 for any 914 is paying too much. That's not what they were originally supposed to be a cheap version of a Porsche. They were half Volkswagen, for crying out loud.
Oh, such a cool car.
What a neat car. All right. And this one in particular is probably one of the coolest looking ones. And it's cool that they put the 2.7 in it. That's got to be awesome. But even in the driving video, which looks like tons of fun. They're ripping through, side streets and everything. They've got that 2.7, which got to make this thing rip. And the guy driving it, he's known as isn't that guy known as Portland Stig? Even he's grinding the damn gears. Even someone that knows what the hell they're doing. The best possible version of the car and the best possible driver on the best roads is still like.
My wife walked in the office while I was watching the driving video, and she goes, "Ugh." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "That guy, he's grinding the gears." I'm like, "You heard that?" She goes, "Oh my God, I heard that." I was like,
"That she did, right?"
Oh my God, it was so bad. JP is like,
the last 914 I have. Look, my wife can drive a stick. My wife loves old cars and classic cars and stuff like that. She's like, I hate 914s. I'm never driving that thing again. She can never find first gear. Nobody can. You can't find. You find Jimmy Hoffa before you find first gear in a 914. Sucks, man. All right, what do you guys think of the results? I did actually want to talk a little bit about this after sale purchase. Mechanism that Bring a Trailer has. I think it's working well. I think it is something that is facilitating more sales, and it's an option that isn't cheesy and devaluing of the car like P-Car Market's Chum Bucket or what they call the deal tank or whatever.
Yep.
Giving buyers an opportunity, a second crack, a second bite at the apple after the car failed to sell to the top bidder, giving that top bidder another moment to go, maybe, okay, I'll step up, and letting those guys actually talk and negotiate, I think that's great. But just opening up the cars for sale for anyone to come in now, putting in just a general classifieds, I think that's just absolutely ridiculous what P-Car Market does, and I think it cheapens the cars that are listed there and cheapens P-Car Market as a site. But I do understand why they do it, because frankly it works. What do you guys think of the results of this 914.6? Do you think that I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on this after sale program that BaT has? Do you guys like that? Do you think that's good? Or do you think it should just, once the car fails to sell, it should just go back to the owner and nobody should get another shot at it? Let us know what you guys think, because I am really curious. The Nerd Herd always knows good stuff, right? The Nerd Herd is where you get the real information. And if you guys are watching this show not live, if you're watching it later, you really got to watch the show live, because all the really cool kids are in the Nerd Herd. They're in the live chat. You're going to meet, if you go in there and you're watching the show live now and you haven't introduced yourself, get in there and introduce yourself. You're going to make lifelong friends, really good people in the Nerd Herd, and really good information. Information is better than what we talk about half the time. Don't you think, Deep?
Totally. And it's ongoing. Whereas we get lost in a conversation. There's just facts and facts and facts. Lots of people complain about all the ads in the live stream tonight. Randy B is complaining, and that's the second complaint I noticed. JP, I also want to give a quick shout out to Brian Anthony, who is the one who submitted the 914.6. Thank you, Brian, for participating and playing the game with us. And all the way, just my opinion, great car, great selection. So keep it up, guys. JP, should we jump to the next car?
Let's move on to the next car. Sorry about the ads, guys. We can't really do much about that. We could either be not monetized or we are monetized. It's like we make what? $1.14 or something like that for the whole show. I mean, if that, but whatever. We're trying. We do need to leave the monetization thing on there in order for the channel to grow. So thanks for bearing with it, guys.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next car on the list that we talked about in the last episode?
Not enough money to cover the negative equity in JP's Macan GTS yet.
Oh, wait, Matthew Weitzel came on. He says, hi, I'm Matt, and I like 914s. Matthew Weitzel, for those of you who don't know, is the owner of 914 Rubber. And let me just say, Matt, I like you more than I like 914s. There it is. I said it. I love you. I love you. But 914s, I like 914s. In fact, actually,
Matt,
I love 914s. I just don't want to pay for one. That's all.
Matt Weitzel's primary car, his secondary car, his third dairy car, and his fourth dairy car are all 914s, and he's super cool. So there is the first. If you do wind up getting a 914 and you need parts for one, you need to know him.
You absolutely need to know 914. Dave, you says drive a 914 before you judge it. Bro, I don't know how many 914s I've owned. My first Porsche was a 914, and I am absolutely judging the 914 because I have. But Matthew Weitzel, thanks for hanging out with us, buddy. We love you. Sorry but seriously, 914s, if you haven't ever had a Porsche, great way to start. Great way to get into it and ease into it, but eventually you'll get a 911. Okay, what's the next car on the list?
Yeah. All right, JP. We're going to circle back to our 2015 Smart 42 Pure that was running no reserve on Cars and Bids. This car has been treated to a gentle suspension, wheel, and tire makeover to give our little tiny itty bitty Smart 42 a bit of a safari or overland look. Our car is on a clean California title and listed on Doug DeMiro's site out of Santa Rosa, California, showing 84,500.
All right, our next guest is Rochelle.
Shut up a second.
at $11,000. JP, I got absolutely lucky. Our car hammered for 12.5, giving me a Yahtzee. But the interesting thing, John, is that car got 48 bids. There were a couple of people that fought over this car, which absolutely cracks me up. Why? Like, it just seems like you could go like buy one regionally for $8,000 and get the wheels and tires for $2,000 and save yourself $2,500. It's just amazing to me that two people sat there and wasted an hour of their day trying to get this car. Are you as shocked as I am by the bid count?
You know, we talked about it. I don't know if it was the last episode or the episode before. Whenever we talk about a cheap car, there was a result where we saw there was like 80 bids or something like that. I think it was that. Was it that GTI or no? It was that silly. It was that silly Carmen Ghia that was built on an SLK body that we talked about on the last episode. Had tons and tons of bids. When you get something that's fun and interesting and it's under $20,000. It allows people to play the game. Again, people go on to BaT and Cars and Bids as entertainment. 99% of the traffic are people that are there just to either dream or interact or express their opinions on the car in the chat. But when something cheap and fun pops up, you know, the cheap seats can actually be part of the fun and do some bidding. And so, no, it doesn't surprise me at all. And as much, you know, I was showing the video of Rami destroying the other smart car. Having spent some time around a smart car and abusing it as, like, unbelievable abuse that we put that car through, both Rami and I walked away from that car with a sense of awe and amazement on how actually good they are. They're not a good car. They're not a great car. You know, yeah, I'd rather have a 914 unless I actually wanted it to be reliable. The smart cars are they're quick, they're kind of fun, and this car is more than just some wheels put on it. I mean, they actually did a lift kit. They put a skid plate on it. They put a lot of there was a lot of effort and work put into this car. I had an old buddy in Seattle when the smart cars came out. He had a whole side business buying parts and mods. When these cars came out, it was kind of like the mid-aughts, and he was making an extra like 20. He was a Boeing guy. He was making like an extra $20,000 a year modding people's smart cars until 2008 hit, and you had the financial crash, and that just kind of killed his business. But you gotta love this thing. The engine's in the back. It's kind of Porsche-ish, isn't it? I don't know.
That's a stretch.
If you ever driven, the biggest problem with these, honestly, is the CVT, the crappy little automatic transmission. I mean, if they had put a manual in one of these would be pretty damn awesome.
I wonder if they did in Europe, because these are also Mercedes A classes in Europe, which is very interesting. So that's a good question on the manual. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a manual one out there overseas somewhere, but they only brought automatics to the United States. People park these cars perpendicular in city streets like London and Paris and Madrid, where parking is at a premium and that sort of thing. So they do make sense as an in-town car. But to see somebody put this much effort into one is absolutely hilarious. Gary, thank you for picking the car.
Do you remember it was a thing? People were going around cities, smart tipping. Like people, like cow tipping, they would tip over. But they wouldn't tip them over sideways. They tip them up. You lift the front. You could get two guys could easily lift the front. And since the engine's the back, it would just be like a Weeble. It would pop up and then it would just stay there and destroy the poor car. So, people would come out of their car and it's on its back.
Do not recall hearing about that in San Francisco. And as a car lover, even if I don't like your car, I don't want to see somebody else hurt your car for no reason. So that's messed up. That's really jacked up. Funny, but absolutely inappropriate. Absolutely inappropriate. Be better, people. Be better.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let us know what you think of the results of the smart
commercials.
Car. We're going to go to commercial. We'll be right back with predictions. Stick around. Don't go away. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden. This guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. All right. Anthony's throwing down the gauntlet. He says, I will allow 914 and 924, but you can't claim the smart car or a Macan is like a Porsche. Hey, wait a minute. I feel attacked. I could say something here. But all right, let's move on. Anthony, we are going to see you this weekend, and we are excited about that. I've got my Aviero watch on, or our Aviero watch on. I'm excited about seeing the new ones that you've created, and we are looking forward to the event up there and meeting with the Spud Syndicate. Hopefully a bunch of the Spuds will be there.
JP, hold up your left hand for just a second to the camera. Mm-hmm. So what you're looking at, folks, these are actual professional test wrists for Anthony Vieira's company of watches. These are professional. You can't get these at home, and you shouldn't try that at home. But these two wrists right here, these are test wrists for future Anthony Vieira watches. I just want to let people know that. It's shock and awe, just shock and awe.
That's going to be good. All right, let's get to some predictions. Is there a freeze in the market? Is the weather going to slow down people buying cars this week? Are the Newsom fires in California going to slow everything down? Or is that going to? Yeah, why aren't they calling it that? I mean, we had the Kung Flu. Yeah. Why won't we call the fires the Newsom fires? Hashtag Elon Musk to get him to take that up or something like that.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Something that'll get around. No, I mean, for real though, there's a lot going on in the world, and it seems like there's always a lot going on in the world, but that just doesn't seem to stop anything when it comes to classic car selling. I know there are a lot of problems when it comes to normie cars, like regular people cars. Sales on those are definitely in a freeze. But a lot of people are talking about how there's going to be a bit of a shortage even on normal cars coming up here in the next few months because of the Newsom fires, because of people going out there going, hey, we got to get a new car. Because, yeah, we've talked about classic cars burning up, but how many regular people cars, how many Nissan Altimas are gone? You know, people are going to be going out there looking to replace their... I was watching the playoff game. I'm sure you were before the show, Deeb. I saw something interesting. Speaking of Datsun or Nissan, they advertised their Sentra, or at least there's a dealership that was advertising their Sentra. For one, I didn't know they were still making Sentras, but apparently that's still a car that exists. And they are offering them for like $22,000. They have like dropped the MSRP by like almost 30%, and they're offering 0% financing. They're on 36 months and stuff like that. I'm just going, holy cow, that's actually a big deal. Except that it kind of dawns on like anybody that has the credit to get that deal, because it's for finally for people who qualify. It's like nobody that has the credit, has that good a credit, is going to buy a Nissan Sentra. They're buying something else, right?
But maybe for their kids. I mean, that sounds like a liquidation sale. That just sounds like they're trying to generate revenue. They've got so many bigger problems, but getting some cars moved and putting any kind of money, I mean, that's a deal. You should go get one. They're Nissan still makes a fairly reliable car. I would not consider them the worst automobile to put your kid in if they're going up to school. You don't know?
Would you consider a Nissan over like a Kia or a Hyundai? At least those have warranties.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, absolutely. But if you're on a budget, you know what I'm saying? Like and you can get a new car. I don't know if there's going to be anyone left around. Like, will Honda honor the warranty on your Nissan Sentra in 2 years from now? But
you mean Nissan, will they honor the warranty? You mean?
No, isn't Honda buying Nissan? Didn't we think
that
was...
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if Nissan goes away, you've got a car with a 3-year warranty, but there's no manufacturer left to honor it. Can you take it to a Honda dealership and get them to, fix the problem? I don't know.
Yeah, I suspect Honda will keep... I just because Honda is buying Nissan, you think that they'll get rid of the brand? Wouldn't they just refurbish it? That wouldn't make any sense. But anyway, that's all.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're not here to talk about normie cars. We're going to get to some predictions. This first car on the list is a car that a lot of people just go gaga over. I've never understood the appeal of this thing. Deeb, what's the first car on the list? I'll tell you right now, I just don't get these.
All right, JP, just an absolute stunner of a car. This is the 1993 Jaguar XJ220-N. Which is very interesting, John, because On classic.com, there are two categories for the XJ220. There's the base model that is the street car, and then there's the XJ220C, which is the competition car. And those are the factory cars that raced at like Le Mans or in sports car racing, either domestically here in the United States and North America or overseas throughout Europe and probably in other places around the world that we rarely talk about. What's interesting, JP, is that there's two vastly different values for the street car and the factory competition cars. But the N is in a totally different category on its own. And JP, the best I can gather is that these are mildly made over by the factory base cars for competition models, but these aren't the full-blown competition motors. So essentially, JP, these are cup cars. I think Jaguar had a series where you raced your Jaguar against other gentlemen, amateur racers in their Jaguar that were dedicated to being track cars. So this car has a factory street dashboard, but all of the door cards and carpeting and sound deadening have been removed, replaced with a roll bar and two, in this case of this car, two racing seats with harnesses and a fire system and a radio system and all that sort of thing. This car theoretically could be street legal in some parts of the world. I doubt it would be in the United States, but it's a very interesting car because it doesn't fit into either of the two categories that we have comparable sales results data by classic.com and on Bring a Trailer to compare it to. So a beautiful car, JP, if you're the kind of baller millionaire or billionaire that has a place at Spring Mountain or what's the one, Thermal in Palm Springs area, and you've got a house and a garage and you've got 18 cars in the garage. So when your friends come over, you and your buddies can drink white wine and go do hot laps on the track that you reserved for yourself for a couple of hours. A guy like that, JP, could make a case for owning a car that is a dedicated track car that he's not going to drive on the streets in the United States. This would be that type of car, and that would be that like sort of demographic of that kind of collector that could buy this car. But JP, when I tell you that this car is niche and that buyer is niche, I mean, we are talking about trying to thread the needle with like a 747 doing 800 miles an hour. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a Hail Mary as far as trying to get a sale here. I get that you've brought the car with beautiful assets to the largest auction site in the world. I still think you're going to need more help to get this car sold. Jaguar is a brand in peril. Their racing history was illustrious in the 1950s after the World War, but was not illustrious in the 1990s. Tom Walkinshaw has a better tie-in to this car than Jaguar's Skunk Works or any of that sort of thing. I wouldn't expect this car to be reliable. I would assume that finding specialized parts for this would be near impossible. You'd have to have a mechanic that could fabricate. And the idea that you think you're going to show up one day, go to your condo at the racetrack, take this car off a battery tender, and you're going to turn the key in it, and then it's going to start and run without problems for a full hour, honey, you're out of your mind. It's never going to happen. So this is an absolutely niche car. I think it's more of a trophy and a beautiful paperweight for your garage than it is an actual car that you're ever going to use. I think it would take a lot to get this car running and reliably so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a sneaky suspicion that all of my blah, blah, blah is closer to the truth than it is to fiction. So anyway, JP, very cool car. Just to give you a sense of what I mean, according to classic.com, a street version of the car is a $513,000 car in the secondary market, which is up. These cars have been on a little bit of a climb. The competition cars, and we only have really two sales to go by, but real factory competition cars tend to sell for about 1.1 million, or about double what the street cars sell. This car, JP, is sitting at $356,000, and it closes in 2 days. That 356 comes to us by way of, and we're not getting into the numbers, I'm just prepping you, 11 bids. So it's gotten a respectable amount of attention. But I'll be shocked if this car sells. Anyway, JP, beautiful car. You're not an XJ fan. Anything about it? Did you think the design is pretty? I mean, of all the supercars from this era, this one you could almost make it arguably the most unique. It is very pretty and very wind tunnel, like the wind tunnel shaped the car, and then they made it work from an engineering standpoint after that. I mean, it's almost like they did design and then, execution on making the car run and turn. And apparently the cars were competitive. But anyway, there you go, JP. What do you think of this very niche Jaguar?
Well, I gotta ask you some questions here because I just don't know these very well. But looking at the interior, that dashboard with the aim dash, it's got the digital dash. That can't be what this came with, is it? That
probably not. No.
Way too modern. And were you implying that this car does not run? You said it's going to be impossible to get this car to run.
No, I'm just implying that it's not reliable.
Okay.
If you walked up one day and expected it to start, you'd be in for a rude awakening.
Right.
I just feel like a car like this, it sits for 2 months, and then you're going to walk up to it and be like, hey, check out my Jag. Let's go around the block. That car ain't leaving the garage. Like, you need somebody to work on this car for a month before you get this car to run. That's what I would think.
But that's what I'm kind of wondering about with the updated dashboard system. Has someone gone through and made this a more usable car? A few months ago, I straight up asked the Nerd Herd and everybody that watches the show, we get a lot of great reviews. We've got a great audience, but we don't have a big audience, right? And so I wonder sometimes, why isn't the show bigger? That's probably the most common comment we get on videos after live is, why isn't this channel bigger? And I straight up asked why. And one of the responses that I got from someone on a DM, just one, they're like, I firmly believe that your channel would be much bigger if you actually read the ads. If we actually went through and read the listings, which we'll be the first to admit, we just kind of scan them and go after it. And I suspect that this is one of those cases where you and I are just scratching the surface. I think we're missing something on this listing. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but there are a lot of things that aren't original to this car that are not period correct that are making me go, well, wait a minute. What are we looking at? Is this? And you would ask the question, Deeb. If I like the way it looks, yeah, I do think the car looks super cool. And maybe it was ahead of its time with that wind tunnel look, but maybe it's just because so many cars wind up looking like this, and it's kind of all the supercars wind up looking the same. And the OMP seats and the OMP, there's just so many things on here that I'm like going, just raising flags. And I think, did anyone in the Nerd Herd actually read the ad on this thing? Maybe you guys can tell us what we're missing. All that said, what's this thing going to bring? It's not original. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but JP, I think that Jaguar would have done that as a cup car. They would have put racing seats and a racing system in there, and possibly a digital
but
dash.
OMPs, those are modern seats. That's a modern dashboard. That's a modern fuel system. Or I'm wondering if there's like a modern fuel system in here. Of course they would have put race seats, but they wouldn't have put those race seats in it. Let's see these.
Okay. I see what you're saying. All right. Well, I'll give you that, JP. So here's the deal on this car, and I lost my place. Let me just get back to it. Here we go. All right. Pulling up my data. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. So 1.1 for a competition car, 513,000 for a, how do you say it, JP? 513 for a street car. John, I think this car is going to stall out at around $450,000. It's at $356,789, and it closes in 2 days. That's on 11 bids. It's getting good action, but I just think that the audience for this car is unbelievably niche, and there's just not a bone in my body that thinks this car will sell in the natural auction. So there you have it, JP. $450 to you.
Well, let me ask you this. If it were one of the normal ones, do you think it would have a chance to sell?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the car looks like it's in decent condition, and those cars have gotten a surprising but uptick this year in the secondary market. So yeah, for sure. But this car doesn't even have an odometer. This was a race car, so I just think for whatever reason, it could get good bids, but I just think it's going to be a tough sell.
Well, and I guess let me ask you another question. Would a regular one have any more likelihood to start up when you turn the key after having sitting around for 2 years?
Unless
or
it's
2 months?
JP, I think if it's a car, and I don't know anybody that's done this, but unless it's a car you use all the time, this is like just one of those cars where I would never count on it to start when you go and put the key in it. Why would this one fail then
why would this one be more likely to fail to sell than a regular one, given that they're both useless paperweights?
Because you can't put a plate on it and drive it on the street unless you do something kinky.
Okay. You can't put a plate on this car. All right, so this is.
I don't think so. There's no odometer, so I don't think this car is destined for the street at all. This is a track only car.
Well, would the original ones have had an odometer? This one has the weird digital
It doesn't.
thing.
To further the stuff, this car is being sold out of Newbury Park, California, on a bill of sale. It doesn't even have a title.
Wow. Yeah, well, that sounds like it would hurt. But it is being sold by a dealer, right? It is being sold by a broker.
It's by WAB.
You've got a reputable seller here. I don't know. All this stuff sounds like crazy nonsense to me. I said it before we even introduced the car. I don't really see the appeal of these. I don't understand why they tend to go for so darn much money. And since no version of them ever really freaking work, I don't see why this one would be any less valuable than a regular one. I would think that this one, because it's more rare, would be worth more. And on top of that, we had a conversation with Nathan Mers on the last episode, who brought up some interesting stuff. He was like, a lot of his buyers. He said something that really stuck with me that I don't think we've ever had anyone say on the show or any of the other guests just mentioned, but we all know it's true, that there's a lot of buyers who don't want to be on record for having, they don't want a transaction. They want no paperwork at all. Deeb, are you claiming that you've said that before?
No, not paperwork. They want a private transaction. They want to buy a car that was never for sale publicly. So private transactions are quantifiably more lucrative. In other words, we saw a Ferrari GTO a couple of years ago sell at an auction in Monterey for like, I can't remember, 48 million or 50 million. I was in the room and everybody was like, that's the highest price paid for one at auction. In other words, everybody got to see it. But then anybody who wrote an article about that car said, but they had all believed one had transacted for 60 million privately, but nobody can prove it because nobody will go on record and talk about it because the people involved with that transaction wish to keep it private. And then those deals are worth more money. And I have said that private transactions happen. There's a whole piece of the market that we never hear about that happens privately, and those cars tend to bring the biggest money. And it's, of course, it's all like it's almost like a fable or fairy tale. But there you go, JP. So what's your bid on this Jaguar paperweight?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that none of this stuff matters. That this is such a special car that people will pay over for it. I think they'll pay more for this one than they would a regular one. And I'm gonna cheat and go off of Gerd's bid, Gerd's watch, and he says it's going to go for $492,000. I'm going to go $490,220 to be cute, and put it out. I'll just again, I don't understand the appeal of these. One, Peter George is in the Nerd Herd. He says, where did it go? Gosh darn it! He had a comment that I feel like I had to bring up. Here it is. Peter George says, never had an issue starting up my F355 Challenge after it was sitting for several weeks or more. Keep the battery charged on a tender. What does an F355 have to do with an old Jag? An F355 is like a Honda, Accord compared to one of these stupid things. What are you talking about, Peter? Are you at the Porsche event? Are you drinking a little too much over there? Is Gary Lee spiking your punch? Get out of here with that silliness.
You kept asking me why these cars weren't reliable, and Steve Greenbelt says in response, I believe, to your question.
Hold on, whoa! I didn't say why. I didn't ask why they're so reliable. I asked if they're unreliable. That's all. I didn't say why.
Yeah, if they're unreliable. Yeah, he goes, it's a Jag. Like, come on, man, it's a Jag. Like, nobody would trust this car. I wouldn't trust an XJS in my own driveway. There's just no way, man. These cars were just not engineered to a high level. And this car, look, this car with a team of engineers on the racetrack, these things were incredible. But man, if you're the sole owner and you're not a mechanic, I think you should stay away from these. They're beautiful, and unless you just want to look at it, I would say buyer beware.
Bid Nerds proving once again that we don't know what we're talking about and we don't read the ads. All right, that's why we look to you, the Nerd Herd, to give us the real info. We're having fun. Let's move on to the next car. We spent way too much time on that stupid thing. What's next?
Yeah. All right, JP, friend of the herd, John Duckworth sent to us this 1991 Jeep Grand Wagoneer Hell Wagon powered by a Hellcat motor. John, what I love about this car is that there's nothing on the exterior that would let you know that there's a Hellcat motor inside. The fact that it's still got these massive mud and snow tires and the stock wheels and the wood siding, and that, you know, what lurks below is like a 700 horsepower screaming supercharged 6.2 liter V8. I think this thing is amazing. I just love it for its sort of Q car. You know, like it doesn't give it away. And I just think that that is brilliant. So whoever built this thing, I tip the hat to them. This would absolutely be the truck that I would laugh at a red light, and then he'd flash his flashers as he went flying by us. Although this thing probably weighs so much, it's probably still not fast, but I bet it sounds incredible. The interior has been tastefully updated. Somebody who did this car, JP, has just a touch of class, and I like the way they executed it. I like what they did. I like its functionality and what it represents. So everything about this is appealing to me, and I'm shocked I'm saying that because, you know, I'm not the Jeep guy, but somebody did this one correct in my opinion. What do you think, JP? You kind of grew up with cars like this. What are your feelings on a Hell Wagon with a Hellcat powered Jeep Wagoneer? This thing makes me laugh. I love it.
Well, the Grand Wagoneers have always kind of held their value. They were always really, you know, even when they were contemporary, they were always kind of ridiculously expensive for whatever the market was at the time. And these have really done a good job holding their value. There have been a lot of rust bucket beat up ones over the years. You know, you could go on the Craigslist for decades and find one for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, maybe even less. But they would always need a ton of work. The era that they built these late model, Jeeps had just horrible emissions controls, just like vacuum lines over tubes, over more vacuum lines. I mean, they were just plagued with overcomplicated systems that cause these just to suck all the power out of them. And like you alluded to, they weigh a gajillion pounds. So you needed every, horsepower you could possibly get out of them. They were never, like hardly anyone ever really used one of these for off-roading. This was really the Range Rover for people who didn't want a European car. This is, this was an SUV. Granted, this one's a 1991, but they made the Grand Wagoneer, back in the 60s or something, or at least the first Wagoneer. So this was the SUV before the term even existed, SUV. Absolutely love these. There's a ton of them in this resto mod world. People have been building these aftermarket, putting real powertrains in them and keeping them kind of stock looking for a very long time. Before Singer was doing it and before all these other big names got into resto modding other brands, people have been keeping these on the road. If you go to a place like Martha's Vineyard or, a lot of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world, you'll find clean versions of these rolling around because there's a lot of people like this is the preferred car for a billionaire that wants to be, low key, that doesn't want to attract all the attention.
Totally.
Absolutely love this rig with power, with modern performance. This is the perfect vehicle to resto mod. Love this thing. It'll be interesting to see how much it goes for. What do you think it'll hammer for?
All right, JP, are you sitting down?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because our car is got 2 days to go still, and it's already at $100,000. Isn't that amazing?
That doesn't shock me even a little bit.
Really?
That's
good.
Yeah. Okay.
I was impressed. I was impressed. I was like $100,000. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was at 60 or 70, but 100,000 with 2 to go. I'm like, man, that's impressive. So JP, let me give you the numbers real quick. According to our friends at classic.com, a 1991, which is the last year of this generation of the Jeep Grand Wagoneer, sells in the secondary market for $38,600. Our car's at $100,000, and that comes to us by way of 20 bids, and it's got 2 days to go. Basically closes on Tuesday. JP, my bid is going to be $138,000, where I believe it will sell. And I will be very envious of the new owner because I just think this thing is really cool, and I don't know why I like it so much, but I dig it. I think it just looks right, and I think it's hilarious. It's got power, like real power, despite being 2 tons. So JP, what's your number on the Hellcat?
Yeah, I'm going to go just barely over you. I'll go 140. I think it could get up to 150. This is a really good build. I think so too. If I own this thing, I would get rid of those big mud tires and put something that looks more period correct. That's the only thing I don't like about this vehicle. I don't think I mean, BF Goodrich all-terrain, those ATs, that's exactly what you want to do, what you want for an all-terrain rig. But this car isn't going to be going in the dirt and the mud. This thing is going to be cruising the boulevard and maybe up a dirt road or something like that to someone's cabin. It deserves tires that look the part. That's the only thing that just doesn't, that and like the dashboard, not the dashboard, but the gauges have more modern gauges because, it has to, because the old analog gauges aren't going to talk to this modern system. The tires just are really grating on me. Normally I love that. You put these tires on a modern Cayenne that you want to make a, Safari version or something like that, but they don't belong here. In fact, once again, white wheels look so dope on this thing. But all right, let's move on. What do you guys think the Wagoneer will bring? The Hellcat? Or not Hellcat, but the Hell Wagon. I think that's fun that they got the badge on the side too. It's great. All right, one more car. What do we got?
All right, JP. Our buddy Chris Carbine has I think commented, Bid Nerds, as seen on Bid Nerds tonight, all like this build. Wow, fantastic on the Jeep. So thank you, Chris Carbine, for carrying the banner for the show. We love you and we appreciate you. JP, I picked this really weird car. We've heard of Factory 5 because they make a lot of like Cobra replicas, but they built kind of their own car. Like besides GT40s and Cobras, Factory 5 made this car back in the early aughts called the, and forgive me, my computer turned. Okay, here we go. On Cars and Bids right now is a 2008 Factory 5 GTM, which is probably the GT40. How do you say it? They're probably the same chassis, but they put their own body on the car and used a General Motors sourced 5.7 liter LS6 V8 and a 5-speed manual. The car is titled for road use, which is very cool. So this is a car you could, even though it's kind of a kit car, you could run it on the street in most of the lower 48. California would probably be the one to give you a hard time. They're busy setting fires, I guess. JP, it's on a North Carolina title. Our car is showing 8,200 miles, and when we get to the data, that will become relevant because a lot of the cars that we've seen transact in the secondary market have all had like 200 miles and 1,100 miles. Somehow, as I did research for this particular car, 8,200 miles was like the high odometer of the ones I clicked to see how many miles were on them. So apparently 8,000 miles on a Factory 5 GT-LM for 2008 is all used up. But the car looks to be in, fairly decent condition. Those look like Z06 wheels to me. The interior is nothing to write home about, but I imagine this being a kit car, it's probably very, very light. And I imagine that motor makes quite a bit of power. And I imagine this is a fun car to drive. Take it or leave it on the looks. The burgundy, sort of the candy apple metallic color, doesn't work for me. If you're gonna make a car look like a race car, give it a flat paint, like a standard yellow or red or white or blue or green or orange or something, like a primary color, and then throw a livery on it. I think my partner would agree with me on that one. So somehow this car, like, it's almost exciting, but not really. And then you kind of tilt your head at it and you're like, what the hell is it? And then you realize it's just somebody's kit car. These don't bring a lot of money, JP, but it's interesting. And it's on Doug DeMiro's site. I don't hate it on there. There's probably some nerd that's going, oh, look, it's cooler than a Corvette. So JP, any love for the Factory 5 GT-LM?
That certainly is cooler than a Corvette, that's for sure. But yeah, the Factory 5 as a brand, I like their kit cars in general. But yeah, if I'm going to buy one, I'm getting a Shelby, I don't want the Cobra, convertible or whatever, but like a Shelby Coupe. The Factory 5 Shelby Coupe is insanely cool, especially when you do the livery on it. I agree with you that this car just looks really plain and the color is terrible. But if you're going to do the kit car thing, the problem with this particular build with this particular kit is that it's trying to be modern, right? It's trying to look like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or even that, XJ220 that we just talked about. But it doesn't pull it off, right? Especially when you start looking at the details. You look at the interior and it's all chintzy, and the interiors are the radiuses around the rear lights, and it's the finish work that a production line or a this car is not a Pagani. It's not going to, don't try to be something that you're not when it comes to modern manufacturing. You can't compete with modern manufacturing. Whereas if you make a kit car that looks like an old Shelby coupe, those were really basic and simple and raw, and you can get away with a basic, simple, raw interior that will match the whole kind of ethos of the car. This car, all those little failures when it comes to the details, just kind of like let you know that it's just not what you think it is. And I don't know what the hell they got gaff tape around all the windows and glass. Is that because it leaks or something? I don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah, it's got to be a ton of fun to drive, but what's it going to bring? It can't be bringing too much money.
For me, JP, the Corvette wheels and the fact that it doesn't have Brembo brakes, that's what kills it for me. It's just it seems like it's more posturing, more bark than bite, So anyways, JP, there wasn't a category for the GTLM on classic.com. They've got all the other Factory Five offerings, but not this. And yet on Bring a Trailer, there are 19 sold cars and 6 or 7 unsold cars. So I averaged out the 19 sales and came up with the average number for classic.com. I'm not for sale. You cannot hire me. $61,100. JP, this car, again, had the highest mileage of all the other cars. So I think if it's going to sell, it'll be at $48,000. But our car is currently sitting at $28,000, and it closes in 2 days from now. So 17 bids, it's at $28,000. I think it needs to get another 20 to sell. So my bid to you is $48,000 on Doug DeMiro's site. Quantifiably, maybe it could get a little bit more on Bring a Trailer, where they've actually run a lot of GTLM. So as I said earlier, I don't hate it on this website. I do think they would have done better on Bring a Trailer.
Yeah, I'm surprised as many of you are coming in the 40s in the nerd herd. Even Gerd, who always knows, is at 44. Bitbert saying 51. Kelly Smith is in here. Did he throw a bit in there? Yeah. I don't even think it's going to break 40. I'm going to go 39.99. Yeah, 39,999, and just say it just barely makes it. And if the seller is smart, he'll take the money because this is the wrong platform too. I don't think Cars and Bids is going to get this done. It needs to be on a bigger platform with more eyeballs. There's not that many people that want something like this.
To sew this episode up, JP, for $39,999, would you rather have this or a 914?
The 914.6 for sure, but for $40,000, I would like the 914 you could get for $40,000 over this car for sure. And I think speaking of keeping it on theme, the weather will affect this car too, because you can't go drive this home. Shipping is going to be difficult to deal with this. With anything that sells this week. So
North Carolina,
I think this
that's
car's
tough.
DOA, unfortunately. All right, let us know what you guys think, and that's a show. We will hopefully see you Wednesday night. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. The Nerd Herd, we love you. Bye. Nerds! Bit Nerds is your YouTube car game show.